everyone, and the meeting is recording, so I'm going to go ahead and call this session to order. Welcome, everybody. Ms. Linden is not here today, so I'm going to do roll call also. I'll do double duty. Donald Yu, or Mr. Yu?
Oh, hello, present.
Perfect. Dr. Turetsky?
I am here.
Ms. Sims?
Here.
Dr. Pruitt?
Here.
Dr. Kawaguchi?
Here.
Dr. Garcia?
Present.
Ms. Brandvine? Ms. Brandvine has let us know that she's not here, and also Ms. Linden is also not here. Mr. Morodomi
Here.
and Dr. Wong present. I believe we have quorum. So we are now going to go on to item number 2, public comment for items not on the agenda. Madam Moderator, if you could open up the chat for us.
Thank you, Madam Board President. I am opening up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or you may simply raise your hand. We will give you a moment, and we are displaying instructions. All right, I see no requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's closed.
Okay, we're now going to go on to item number 3, which is the board president's report. My report.
This is the moderator. It looks like the board president is having some technical issues, so I recommend perhaps turning off her camera. If she can do that, that might help her bandwidth.
Hello. Ooh.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Sorry, I think my Wi-Fi just dropped. So, did everybody hear my call for nominations? I don't know exactly when I cut out. No, you didn't? Okay, so we're on item number 3 right now. I am calling for board officer nominations. The nomination ballot is listed in our board member handbook, which is under item 3A1. And nominations must be received by April 8th. And we will have elections at the next full board meeting, which is on May 20th, 2022 this year. Shar, is there anything else that I need to mention about board nominations before we move on?
Just that we, of course, accept board nominations from members of the board as well as stakeholders within the community. All of those we ask to be in by April 8th so that we are able to allow those who are nominated to provide a statement and prepare for a presentation to the board on May 20th.
Fantastic. Okay, well then we are now going to go on to item number 4, which is discussion and possible approval of meeting minutes. We will start off with item 4A, the November 19th, 2021 board meeting minutes. Does anyone have any comments about those? Okay, well, if nobody does, I just have one comment, just for staff. Item 4B. Reading my notes now. Sorry. So it was section 5, line 5 of the November 19th minutes. Someone wrote Charlottesville, and actually the NBEO is located in Charlotte, North Carolina. So if we could just change Charlottesville, which is in Virginia, to Charlotte, North Carolina, that would be great.
Excellent. I believe we also have a typo. on Mr. Mordomi's name. Mark, do you recall which set of minutes that was and the section within?
January 7th.
Actually, can I go ahead and ask for comments for all 3 board meeting minutes? And then can we just approve all 3 of them at the same time? Or should we approve each one individually, Shara?
I think these are minor revisions that could be made. So I think that as long as you could pull together a motion for all 3 with the minor topographical revisions noted here today, and approve all 3 at once.
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to ask for comments from board members regarding minutes from November 19th, January 7th, and January 21st. Does anyone have any other additional comments or revisions?
I do. It's Glenn. So I did not attend the 7th and 21st, but I have reviewed the minutes, so I feel comfortable voting on them.
Board counsel here. I do have one comment about the January 21st meeting minutes. I just want to note that that board counsel was in attendance. That was me.
That is correct. Thank you so much, counsel.
Thanks.
Do we have any other comments?
None.
Shar, should we open this up to public comment?
Yes, please.
Wait,
We do have a
what you
motion,
do-
correct?
Oh, all right. Could I get a motion to pass meeting minutes from November 19th, January 7th, and January 21st with aforementioned revisions, please?
Board Member Sims seconds the motion.
Was there a first?
Yeah, I need a first.
It's Garcia. I'll make a motion to accept minutes as written for November 19, January 7, January 21, with minor edits as required.
And Ms. Sims, will you still second it?
Yes. Board Member Sims seconds the motion.
Okay, let's go ahead and open the motion up to public comment, please, Madam Moderator.
Thank you, Madam Board President. I have opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or you may simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions for your reference, and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no request for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's closed.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and have a roll call vote. Mr. Yu.
Here.
Oh, yes or no, or aye or
Yes.
nay to the motion?
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Turetsky,
Aye.
Ms. Sims,
Aye.
Dr. Pruitt,
Aye.
Dr. Kawaguchi,
Aye.
Dr. Garcia,
Aye.
Ms. Brandvine is absent, Ms. Linden is absent, Mr. Morodomi,
Aye.
and Dr. Wong, aye. Motion passes. All right. Thank you, everyone. Let's go ahead and go on to item number 5, which I believe is our presentation by ARBO. Shara, is ARBO here right now?
Yes, they are. We have Lisa Fennell. Let me see who we just promoted. I know we have Dr. Susie Yu. We also have Dr. Patrick ONeil and Dr. Ken Lawanda. Please take it away, ARBO representatives. We appreciate your time and are very excited to hear about your efforts to maintain strict a strict line against so sorry, it's Friday. I haven't had enough coffee. Any sort of conflict of interest between NBERC and funding from NBEO, as well as any information on OCE Tracker. We appreciate your being here today and look forward to better understanding the processes within your organization.
Thank you. I'd be happy to start the conversation. I'm Lisa Fennell. I'm the Executive Director of ARBO. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about the history and the background of our National Board Exam Review Committee. The committee was established back in 1991 as part of an agreement between ARBO and NBEO. when NBEO took over the administration of the TMOD exam. And so the initial purpose of the committee was to review the examinations on an annual basis and to assure that they continue to meet the needs of the member boards. So all of ARBO's member licensing boards are the states, territories in the US, the Canadian provinces. So NBERC is tasked by the ARBO Board of Directors to evaluate the content of the exams, review any changes in policies and procedures that impact or may impact the validity or reliability of the exams, to ensure that the information on MBEO's website properly presents the exams to potential candidates and optometrists, to generate specific recommendations for continued quality improvement in the exams, and to investigate, review, or clarify any issues brought forth by the ARBO member boards. The committee is established every year by the ARBO Board of Directors. The makeup of the committee is between 5 and 8 members, just depending on how many volunteers we get. We issue a call for volunteers every year around the time that we have our June annual meeting. Members that volunteer who are available during the time that the committee is scheduled to meet are appointed to the committee by the board. The budget for the committee is developed, like all of ARBO's budget, by the Finance Committee. It's approved as part of ARBO's annual budget by the Board of Directors and then by the member boards every year at our annual meeting. And the NBERC committee attends NBEO council meetings every year so that they can observe the exam development process as it's going on. The committee also has discussions with NBEO staff, board members, the committee and council members, and NBERC drafts a report of their findings. So the report is reviewed by the ARBO Board of Directors, and then it's distributed to ARBO's member boards and to the NBEO for any response that they would like to make. The committee presents the report every year at our annual meeting, which is typically in June, and the committee members discuss the report, their findings, any issues that were discovered, and NBEO staff and board members are also present to respond to any questions that are asked about the report. So that's kind of how NBERC was established and how it works. And now I would ask Dr. Patrick ONeil, who has been the NBERC committee chair for the past few years, if he could tell you a little bit more about the committee's focus and how it's sort of been changing over the past few years.
There we go. Am I coming through? There we go. Good. Thank you. I've got a couple of hats that I need to disclose before I start. I promise not to be too long. I'm Pat ONeil. As many of us know, optometry is a pretty closely knit profession where many of us have served in a variety of volunteer capacities. I'm here today solely in the capacity of co-chair of the National Board Exam Review Committee of ARBO. I'm also the immediate past president of ARBO, and I will offer and disclose that as of January 1 of this year, I have begun serving a term as one of ARBO's 4 nominated seats on the NBEO Board of Directors. However, I'm speaking today solely for my involvement over the past 6 years with NBERC, which predates my time on the NBEO board. So those are my disclosures. In the past, I want to give you a little bit of history, but specifically about NBERC, and then kind of the nuts and bolts of what we do and how we do it. In the past, NBERC had focused primarily on exam content. And frankly, there were not many issues to be found. The quality of the exam, the reliability, the validity, all found to be excellent, very, very good. some of the past issues that we discussed, there was an issue with testing for subconjunctival injections in West Virginia. There were some issues with exam security, and then, of course, updating Part 3. The exam security and the update in Part 3 are always sort of ongoing, bringing up to date where NBEO is on those issues. After requests from ARBO's members due to scope of advancement, NBEO developed laser and surgical procedures exams. So just kind of an example of the dialogue between our member boards and NBEO via NBERG. More recently, however, NBERG has also looked into conflicts of interest in the exam development process and within the NBEO board. For instance, a majority of item writers are from optometry schools. And so NBERG looked into that to find out if there could be bias from specific programs introduced into the examination. So one school would have favor over another, or if just students would be favored overall. And so one of the other concerns that we looked at was NBERG had concerns that ASCO had 3 representatives on the NBEO board who could be perceived as representing the students. All ASCO nominees to the NBEO board are administrators who are responsible for the success of their program and their students. And these same administrators also are responsible for finalizing cut scores. NBERG felt that the conflict of interest would be better managed if ASCO nominees were not administrators. So these are just kind of 2 examples of what we look at with NBERG now, as opposed to just looking at the exam content, which was fairly straightforward. And I think as Dr. Wong and Dr. Pruitt, who have been past members of NBERG, will know that the cumulative think tank that develops this examination is a humbling experience. These are dedicated people that know their content and really are dedicated to do a great job. So the report early on was always kind of the same report. And now we're trying to be a little more involved in the development of the exam. Are there conflicts of interest? Is there any sort of bias that could be introduced that would make it less valid for you as a state board to license your candidates? So NBERG is really part of ARBO's commitment to our members that our program and services are of the highest quality and the greatest value. This is a commitment, this is a committee that any responsible organization would have in place to assure its commitment to its members and its stakeholders. Again, I'd like to defer to Drs. Wong and Pruitt as past members of NBERG. I don't want to put you on stage unexpectedly, but they should have a clear understanding of what the committee does and the issues that we address. So to sum things up, what exactly is ARBO and NBERG's role with the licensing examinations? Well, your board is responsible for ensuring that those optometrists who enter practice are competent to independently provide safe, effective, and ethical optometric services. And the boards rely on the NBEO to test and verify that competence. So ARBO's role is to make sure that the exams continue to meet the needs of your board and all of our member boards. So any board that has issues or concerns with NBEO examinations should come to ARBO, and ARBO and NBERG will start the dialogue with NBEO to see how the issues can be addressed and how things can be resolved. So that is my presentation. I would certainly entertain any questions or comments or anything else that you would like to know about NBERG or how it functions.
Thank you, Dr. ONeil. I will say that when I watched, when I was on NBERG and watching how all the different committees went through developing the questions, it was very impressive. So definitely not concerned about conflict of interest in regards to question development for the NBEO exam. I don't know if you were planning on addressing this today, but I know that we as the California State Board have had discussions with ARBO and NBEO and NBERT regarding conflict of interest of monetary payments. And I would still be interested in hearing what you guys have decided or discussed amongst yourselves about that.
Well, I'm not sure MPERG, if I'm speaking strictly from an MPERG's perspective, has much to do with the monetary payments. I can let Lisa address that. I certainly have comments that I'm willing to share with you, but Lisa, perhaps you might be able to give a little better history of that.
Well, as I said, the budgets are set by the ARBO Finance Committee and approved by the Board of Directors and then approved by our members. So the committee really has no say or involvement in how money is spent. I know we've had this conversation, and I guess I still am not real clear on how it's a conflict. Through the agreement that ARBO and MBEO have, ARBO is a co-owner of the exams. Therefore, the ARBO board doesn't feel that there's any conflicts. So I guess if we had questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah. Dr. Wong, if I may, the NBEO is a service much like OCE Tracker and COPE is, and so I guess I'm concerned is how there is a connection between conflicts of interest. Any monies derived from ARBO go back into services and programs for you, for our boards, and so if there is a conflict, we would certainly like to know that. If there is bias that's being introduced somewhere along the way, if we are biasing one board versus another, or if there's something else, we have looked at this upside and down the other, and frankly, this conversation has usually occurred with advocacy groups, not regulatory groups, and so I don't know in the history of ARBO that there's ever been a member who has questioned conflicts of interest with income, because the services go towards how we service you, and so I guess I would look for a specific A to B to C, where is that conflict occurring, and what would be the purpose? What would be the reason for having a conflict in the first place? What would be that issue? So I guess I'm looking for clarification.
President Wong, it's Executive Officer Murphy. May I try to help kind of frame?
Yes, please. Oh, we might want to, and I'm not sure if all of our board members know what I'm referring to. So
Most certainly.
Right. So if you want to just let them know before you make your comment, that would be great.
Of course. So this issue came to the concern of President Wong and Board Member Brandvine after viewing the presentation materials from the ARBO annual meeting. Of course, ARBO in its annual meeting reports to member boards its financial statements. And in those financial statements, it's delineated that a particular amount of money, I will not say Lisa, if you'll confirm the amount for me. I thought that it was $250,000 of ARBO annual funding comes from NBEO directly. Is that the correct amount, or will you correct me if it is not?
The amount that may have been the amount that year. It changes every year, and the information is really confidential to be shared just with our members.
And so think that there was that understanding, but really bringing to ARBO and to NBERC the concern that our members had, that if it is NBERC's job to make sure that NBEO is the best measurement possible for state boards or jurisdiction boards to base qualification for practice on, that there is a concern that ARBO and NBERC as a committee might have a conflict of interest in ever pushing back on whether or not NBEO's measurement is the best that it can be, because a percentage of the funding for ARBO comes directly from NBEO. And certainly an understanding of confidentiality, but also a need for this board to ask the question where we see an issue could be. And definitely in December, I think there were some good discussions about how ARBO has looked at this. Basically, right, our California board depends on NBEO to tell us that optometrist students are ready to practice. But the committee that keeps them accountable is tied to an organization which receives funding from the tester. And so for us as member boards, I believe that for Dr. Wong and for Member Brandbein, there was a concern that there again might not be the same autonomy and ability to push back on any efforts by NBEO to not as aggressively as possible create a measurement that will give us the best estimate of whether or not optometry students are ready to practice. Is that a clearer kind of explanation? I don't know, Dr. Wong, if you want to step in and maybe correct anything that I've stated.
I think Dr. ONeil actually wanted to say something, but I agree, but no.
Just very quickly, that NBERG is not the only entity to review NBEO board or the NBEO and its examinations. I mean, California itself, I think they do every 10 years, they do a complete review of NBEO. Florida has just completed a review of that. Some of the provinces of Canada have just done a review to assure that independently that it is meeting the standards and recommendations and requirements of their boards. So NBERG is an internal assessment, but there are several externals from our member boards. They're government agencies that have also done reviews on that. So just to clarify.
Okay. Do any members have any questions for Dr. ONeil or Ms. Funnell? All right. Thank you very much, the two of you, for talking today.
Good. Thank you for the opportunity. And if there are any questions, any other concerns further on in the meeting, feel free to contact us.
I think Dr. Turetsky changed his mind.
I do have one question. I wasn't sure if this was the end of your presentation, or since it is, I do have a question. And Shara, I'd like your input on this as well. And tell me if this is not apropos to this topic. But with OCE Tracker, and is it okay to discuss OCE Tracker?
Of course, please follow
Hello?
the reasoning. Of course, Dr. Turetsky. Yeah, of course.
Okay.
If we find that it's not particularly pertinent to the funding issue, then we can of course come back around to it within the OCE Tracker discussion. But please.
Okay. Here's my question. I know we've discussed this at a previous meeting a couple of years back. If the board was able to have OCE Tracker utilized by all licensees in the state, would that improve our ability to monitor CE in lieu of the questions that were brought up during the sunset review on CE on CE monitoring?
Oh, I think we're going to talk about that after Dr. Yu presents OCE Tracker. Is that correct?
And that's what I was wondering if we were on. Okay, then I have nothing to say.
I think Dr. Pruitt also has his hands raised. You guys are using the hand raising icon so well today.
I just saw it on the bottom there, so I had to try it.
I did, it's Dr. Pruitt, yes. I did have a question and it's kind of right now. And so you mentioned the independent reviews that occur. Do those independent reviews have the same potential impact on the MBEO testing as NBERG's review?
I think they do. Every review is a little bit different, and every government agency has a little bit different way of looking at it, which is actually good. You know, the more times you can inspect and examine something from different angles and you know, try to break it, the better. So I think that it makes for a more robust review. So would I say, is it exactly like how NBERG works? Probably not. They have different protocols. You would have to go to the agency that does your review to know exactly. But my guess is they're a little bit different and biased towards exactly what are California's needs, what are Florida's needs, what are Minnesota's needs, things like that. But all of them have come through very, very well. So in terms of, you know, do we look at other entities to offer another examination? You know, this one has been with us for a long time and it's been doing a very good job. So I'm not sure if that answers your question or not. I'll defer to Lisa, who knows more than I do.
I just figured out how to raise my hand. I was actually, I was going to talk about something else, but just to follow up on that, I know in these cases where Dr. ONeill mentioned that Florida had done a review and California had done a review, NBEO had made us aware of those and had shared that information with us because they, through ARBO, want to be as transparent as they can with ARBO's member boards. And so the only thing I was going to add is, while ARBO and NBEO do have a revenue sharing agreement, NBERG is more the collective voice, I would say, of ARBO's members. The committee is made up of people from ARBO's membership who, again, have no control over how money is spent, or in a lot of cases aren't really aware. And so it is the collective voice, the feedback from the members that is gathered that actually NBEO is very welcome to because you are their customer. And if their customers are not happy with their product, that's going to be a problem for them. But through the NBERG process, through the drafting of the report, through the conversation at our annual meeting, where the report is reviewed and all of the members that are present are able to ask questions or bring up any issues, I believe that's how any potential conflicts, you know, would arise, would be seen. And it just hasn't happened.
Thank you. That does answer my question.
It's Glenn. I have a follow-up question, Lisa. So, is there any way that you could provide to the board more details about the NBERG membership and how decisions are made on who's on it? That could be helpful for us to understand what you just explained and see if it would fit into concerns that have been raised.
Sure, it's actually a very simple process. It's no different from ARBO's other committees, and several of you have served on our committees or are currently serving on our committees. We do a call for volunteers throughout our membership, so board members and staff can volunteer for NBERG or for any of our committees. And then the board gets that information of who volunteered and goes through and appoints the committees. Because ARBO is a very small organization, I can tell you that often if you volunteer, you're put on that committee. There's not a lot of, we want this person, we don't want that person. We take all the help that we can get because we are a very small organization. What it comes down to for NBERG is usually whether somebody is able to attend the meeting. The meetings that are scheduled where the committee comes to observe the MBEO councils, those are scheduled years in advance. And so anybody that volunteers to be on NBERC, the one stipulation is, are you available to attend that meeting? The past 2 years, those meetings have been virtual, so it's been easier for people to attend. But in the past, in my experience, the only reason somebody that volunteered that was not placed on the committee was because they had a conflict and weren't able to travel to come to that meeting in person. So it's really anybody who volunteers to be on the committee is appointed to the committee unless they have a conflict on the time of the meeting.
Would there be a possibility of expanding the explanation of who is qualified to serve on that committee? So possibly a vetting process where committee members have to prove or show that they don't have any biases, whether it be commercial or such.
Sure, I would think we could do that. We do something similar with our COPE committee, is we do ask them to disclose any, financial relationships they have, biases they may have. And so I think we could definitely do the same with the NBERC committee.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think Dr. ONeil also has his hands raised.
You guys may regret having this little hand icon here. Glenn, I wanted to kind of further elaborate. If a member board does have an issue with the exam or anything, we actually try to get somebody from that board to participate in the NBERC committee. Now, at first blush, you might say, well, gee, that's letting the fox into the hen house. But not really. It allows us to make sure we truly understand the issue, and then are we addressing it properly? And the committee is big enough that one person is not going to sway the intent of NBERC. So many times when we look at these conflicts of interest, for instance, that a lot of our exam content people are academians from different schools. Well, you might think that, well, that will be a conflict of interest right there. But there are 20-some different schools, and each of them teaches a little bit differently. So there is a dilution factor involved here, so that it's very difficult for one program to influence the entire test. And so also by having all of those different people from all the different programs, and it's not exclusively academians, but it's a good share of it. Again, it gives a broader perspective for all of the schools to have input. So when it comes to NBERG, the same type of thing. There is a bit of a dilution factor. We do want anybody with concerns to come in. And frankly, we were delighted that Dr. Wong and Dr. Pruitt were able to join us. And so to be able to see what goes on. But are they going to influence the decision of the NBERG? No. But they are going to participate, and we are going to make sure that we have focused on the issue and the problem as closely as we possibly could. So I don't know if that helps or not.
It does. Thank you.
Oh, Ms. Fennell too.
I can also add, I just thought of this, that NBEO through ARBO has actually gotten members for their committees, and recently a task force that was working on the development of the new Part 3 is that they wanted input from our members, and so we did a call for volunteers for them to serve on some of their committees. So that's another way to be involved in the process.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
Yes, sorry, this is Dr. Pruitt again. And so I feel like I'm kind of in a unique position because having just recently served on the committee, it was a phenomenal experience. Like, it was great to see how MBEO puts together their product, and it is truly exceptional. But I'm just, at the same time though, I sit on this board and I do see where they're coming from as far as that financial relationship, and could that be a conflict? I can say without any doubt that it certainly is not now. Having gone through the process, there was no hesitation to present any issues with the board. There wasn't any restraints due to that financial relationship. But I guess the question that I ask is, could it? With the financial relationship being there, could it at some point become an issue where, especially now that I know it kind of fluctuates from year to year, I think the issue is that it's that potential, not that it is happening, but just it doesn't kind of, it's not really able to bypass any kind of that level of scrutiny. Like, that will always be there, where that financial relationship could be seen as the door, so to speak, to conflict arising and deteriorating the quality of the test. And so absolutely it's not happening now, but I guess my question is, the way it's arranged, could it?
Any comments? Anyone else? Or Ms. Fennell, do you have anything else to add?
Oh, I think Dr. ONeill had his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dr. ONeill, please. Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and kind of going back to my earlier comments, that MBERG is not the only entity to review NBEO. Other outside entities are also doing that, and that, when you talk about conflicts, conflicts are not necessarily bad. They just have to be identified and managed, and so either a dilution effect, like we talked about before, or other entities also reviewing that have nothing to do with MBERG or ARBO, for instance, California. So I would kind of go back to that example, that it is not the only entity that reviews it. And I'm not going to speak for NBEO, but I would think that they would welcome any entity to review their process. Obviously high stakes examinations are highly confidential, but you can look at the process and see what's being done, and there's just never ever been an issue with that. So, for what it's worth.
Thank you. Oh, Ms. Sims and Ms. Fennell and Dr. Kawaguchi. Oh my gosh, this hand raising is going crazy today.
Hi, this is Board Member Sandra Sims. I just wanted to really piggyback on what Dr. Pruitt said. The issue that comes to mind for me is the potential for there to become a conflict. It's good to know that that is not an issue today, but it could become one. And so for me, having a system with checks and balances is important. So thank you, Dr. ONeill, for indicating that there are other entities. But I think what we would like, and maybe that information is already available, Shara, but if we can see what are those other entities and to what extent are they really providing a checks and balance, if sometime in the future the potential for a conflict of interest becomes a real problem.
Right. I'm going in order of hand raising. So then it's
Okay.
Ms. Fennell, Dr. Kawaguchi, and then Shara.
Thank you. And I guess there's always the potential for a conflict. And, I've already written down to, put together some sort of disclosure information, ask the committees to disclose conflicts or relationships. And any other suggestions, I know that the ARBO board would be, happy to consider. We can talk about this ourselves. But, there are potential conflicts all over the place. We see all the time where state board members are appointed by the governor, but they're nominated by the state association. And so there's the potential there to be representing optometrists as opposed to representing the public, and those are managed and handled properly. So I would think that we could, look at it the same way as far as ARBO and our committee. And like I said, we'd be happy to incorporate anything that any ideas that you have or anything that would, help prevent these potential conflicts from arising in the future.
Glenn, are you?
Yep. So I would maybe kind of give a heads up to our board counsel, Rebecca, but I think one of the, so that what you just said, Lisa, is important to us because the California State Board, there are certain things that are set in place for us to try to reduce bias risk. And I guess the question that we're having as a board is there enough clarity? Is there enough protections in place to meet the criteria that we're being charged with as board and board members? And so we just want to ensure that so that the relationship can continue and there's not a risk of future question about the test validity.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. This has been very helpful. And like I said, we'd be happy to talk about it more and maybe come back with something, or open to any suggestions on what ARBO can incorporate to put in place that would make everybody see that these conflicts are managed, disclosed, managed, aren't getting in the way of what NBERC is doing.
Thank you.
Shara, did you have a comment?
Thank you, President Wong. I just wanted to respond to, I think the question that was posed to me by Board Member Sims. I think also too here, right, we have a lot of new board members. And so I think it will behoove us to bring back our analysis created by the Office of Professional Exam Services within DCA to show you the sort of review that we do of the MBEO exam. And then I think really to set that next to the questions that have formed now, and see whether or not we feel like our review through OPES is getting at the issues that we see here. I mean, essentially, right, where it's not a test item issue. It's if ARBO / NBERC is reliant upon MBEO for its existence, is there enough autonomy to push back on overarching testing procedure or development or process? That it's not that we believe that there is an issue of integrity with the test questions, but is there just at base a conflict of interest if the organization depends upon the other for its existence? And so I think what we've got to do is to bring back our OPS analysis that was done, I think, in 2020. And so to bring that and then have the board perhaps take a look at that next to the questions that are being posed here today. I don't know, President Wong, if it makes sense to bring this to a committee or if you want to bring this back to the full board. Let me know how you want to move forward, and then we can make sure that we agendize a review of the OPS analysis and these questions side by side, either in committee or here as a full board, whichever you prefer.
Maybe we could bring this back. We could have another board meeting about this, and then maybe invite Dr. ONeill and Ms. Fennell back for our May 20th meeting if you guys are free. It would be great, I think, to have a further discussion about this. If possible.
Staff can set up that to happen, and hopefully, of course, depending upon schedules for Ms. Fennell and Dr. ONeill.
Thank you. One final question or comment, and then I promise I'll quit raising my hand. Number one, just to kind of clarify what Shara said, ARBO is not dependent on MBEO for its existence any more than we're dependent upon COPE or we're dependent on OCE Tracker for our existence. We can do without, I wouldn't say without MBEO, but without MBEO income, and ARBO would continue to thrive and do just fine. So that's one thing. The other thing I wanted to get back to what Glenn was saying about the conflicts of interest. You know, we will never make the conflicts of interest go away. They will always be there. We are a small community. Everyone on your board wears multiple hats. I wear multiple hats when we go into different committees, and it really is how we manage those conflicts, how we identify them, how we're transparent with them, and then how we manage them. So, but they never actually go away. So it's that process more than making it extinct, because it'll never be extinct. We're just too small a profession, and we have some great volunteers with big hearts and doing lots of good things. But ARBO spends a great deal of time, especially at our annual meetings, on educating the hat you're supposed to wear at the proper time in the proper place and how you're supposed to think about it. But again, the conflicts always exist. It's just how they manage. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. And hopefully we will see you guys again, both in May at our next quarterly meeting. And then I think we have a presentation also about OCE Tracker today, if I remember correctly.
If there's still time, I'm not sure how much time we have.
Sure, can we talk, have a presentation or short presentation about OCE Tracker? We've done. It's 10:21.
Yes, most certainly. We allotted 60 minutes for the presentation here with ARBO.
Perfect.
Okay, I actually have put together a few slides. Is it possible for me to share my screen?
I apologize. Just ever so quickly, the moderators let me know that Dr. Garcia has his hand raised.
Dr. Garcia, actually, it was a question for Dr. ONeil. So I'm new to this discussion, so I'm kind of learning this issue on the fly today. So forgive me if my question is ignorant, but the question is regarding the financial aspect between MBEO and ARBO. So you were saying that financial transfer of money is relatively insignificant, or ARBO would be fine without it. Can you explain to me what that financial relationship is about and why that money is even transferred or paid to ARBO?
Well, I'm going to let Lisa go into the details. Some of the details of the contract are of course, confidential, and we don't know who all is on the meeting. There's a public aspect of it. We certainly don't mean to be non-transparent, but the income derived is the same as the income from other services that ARBO has, in terms of OCE Tracker and COPE and MBEO. So there's income derived from all of the services that we provide, so that we can improve the services and improve the products that we have for our member boards. And so, that's why I'm always a little scratching my head as to the issues with the conflicts, because it's not as if the ARBO board is spending the money on themselves. It's going directly back into services and products for the boards to make your job easier, more cost efficient, and to fulfill your mission. And so MBEO is just one of those sources. COPE is the other, but we're not dependent on all of them. But because they do provide income, we're able to provide more and better services. I don't know if that helps to answer that. Lisa may chime in, but a lot of the details we're a little hand-tied a little bit, because a lot of the details of the contract are confidential, and I think perhaps with a one-on-one we could discuss that, but I'm going to let Lisa go into that so I don't get myself in trouble.
Well, I would just add the relationship between ARBO and MBEO goes very, very far back. The exam started as an exam committee of ARBO and then eventually was incorporated into a separate organization, which was MBEO. But there's been a financial relationship for many, many years, which started when I mentioned when MBEO took over the TMOD exam, which had been an exam which was developed and was being administered by ARBO on behalf of our members who wanted an exam beyond initial licensure, wanted an exam to test treatment and management of disease. And ARBO, again, being a small organization, decided to let MBEO take over that, or I guess ARBO's members. Every decision is made by our members. And in exchange, there was a financial arrangement because of the money that ARBO was not making off the exam ourselves. And any profession that has a licensing exam, in many cases, it's the ARBO-like organization that develops and administers the exam. In our case, which is kind of unique, similar to medicine, the exam is developed and administered by a different organization, but there is a very close relationship between the ARBO group and the exam group, similar to FSMB and NBME in medicine.
Right. Does anyone else have any other questions? Otherwise, well, we can talk about this again in another board meeting and then also hopefully on May 20th. And I'm going to let Ms. Fennell talk about OE Tracker since I have questions about OE Tracker I would like answered too. I would love to hear about OE Tracker. Thank you.
And this is the moderator, Lisa. I just gave you presenter rights. So if you go to the bottom middle of your screen, there's a share button and you can share any slides you wish.
Okay. Find how to get there. Oh, here we go. Okay, can everybody see the slides on my screen? Right. So I just put together a couple of slides to kind of give you an overview of how OE Tracker works. We can certainly talk about this in more detail, but to start, OE Tracker is our program that electronically captures, verifies, stores optometrist CE attendance information. It benefits the licensing boards, the optometrists, and also the CE providers. And so the statistics, currently there are over 60,000 active optometrists in OE Tracker, and about 6.5 million records. The program is about 20 years old, and we've been gathering a lot of data over that time. We currently have 8,502 licensees that have a California license. That number is going to be plus or minus a few, as people may have gone inactive or retired and new licensees come on board. But 8,196 of those do have some CE data in their account. So some of the value that we hear for our member boards that use OE Tracker is you're able to audit 100% of your licensees, reduce administrative efforts, and one thing that the members usually really like is we can electronically transfer data from our database into your database, your electronic licensing system, whatever method you are using. You can also look up attendance for an optometrist who is applying for a license, maybe who's licensed in another state, and you want to make sure that they've kept up with their CE or met the requirements of the California board. So the value to optometrists 24/7 access to review their CE hours and the requirements. The accounts can be accessed on our website or also on our OE Tracker mobile app. And they can review the progress toward meeting their renewal requirements in every state or province where they're licensed. It's not just specific to one state. The data that we capture, any data from COPE accredited or non-COPE courses, we capture some examples of non-COPE CPR courses. In a lot of states, there are specific board-approved courses, maybe a legal course or something. Anything can be captured into OE Tracker, and only data that is documented by CE providers is accepted and uploaded. So the ways that happens are a CE certificate that is given to an optometrist with the course information, attendance spreadsheets that are sent to us from CE providers with their attendees on it. And also through our mobile app, if any of you are optometrists and have been to a meeting where they have used the OE Tracker mobile app, at the end of the course, they put up a little QR code and you open your app and scan it, and that attendance is automatically dropped into your account immediately. We do not allow individual optometrists to self-report their hours. Every submission is reviewed by one of my staff and verified that it's legitimate. Occasionally they're not. It doesn't happen often, but occasionally we discover errors. So as a member board, every member of ARBO has a username and password where you can log in on our website. And here's a list of options when you log in, what you can do. We have a handbook that shows you how to use OE Tracker. You can look up attendance data. You can look up OE Tracker numbers. You can validate an ARBO OE Tracker certificate that you may have received. And then this towards the bottom where it says automatic data integration, and OE Tracker API is the way to electronically transfer the data from OE Tracker into your system. And if you log in and click on that link, it gives technical information that's beyond me because I'm not a tech person, but it spells it out pretty clearly. I mentioned our mobile app. You can record attendance of the courses in real time, like I was saying, while you're at the course. The app can be used to record attendance by all optometrists, regardless of whether they have paid for their subscription. And optometrists can view their course transcript on the mobile app and also use it to submit CE certificates. So if you have certificates that were given to you by a CE provider and that CE provider isn't reporting to OE Tracker, you open up your app, take a picture of the certificate, enter your OE Tracker number, enter some information, send it to us. My staff, again, will check the certificate, verify that it matches the course information, and then it gets entered into the optometrist account. Here's just some examples of how some of our members are using the program. I have to move the box away from my slide. In Alabama, the CE data is automatically transferred from OE Tracker. And when they do their renewal, the Alabama board says if your hours are in OE Tracker, you do not get audited because they can see that you've earned the correct number of hours. Those that do not use OE Tracker could potentially be audited. The Arizona Board of Optometry requires all licensees to use OE Tracker, and they perform 100% audit. In Kansas, the data is automatically transferred into their licensing system, and when the optometrists go to renew, the system determines whether or not they've met the requirements, and if they have, they can renew. If they haven't, they're not able to renew until they can, prove that they have met the CE requirements. Ohio also uses OE Tracker for electronic audit. It is voluntary, but most of their optometrists do use OE Tracker. And when they've met the requirement, they just send an email to the board and say, check my OE Tracker account. The board checks it, says, yes, you're good, allows them to renew their license. And then in Tennessee, all their licensees are required to use OE Tracker, and CE providers are required to submit their attendance. And ARBO actually does the audit for Tennessee. There's a charge for that, but we do their audit. We send notices to their licensees as to whether or not they've met the requirements, and we send audit reports to the board monthly. A couple of testimonials from the Kansas Board of Optometry and the Minnesota Board of Optometry. You can read these. I'm not going to read them word for word, but a couple of our members that have been using OE Tracker for a few years and have found it to be very helpful. And then lastly, just why would you want to use OE Tracker? Why should you use OE Tracker? As I've said, we do review all the submissions to make sure that they're valid and accurate. We can track the CE in all jurisdictions where an optometrist is licensed. So every optometrist is assigned an OE Tracker number as a student when they register to take the national board exams. They're assigned that number. MBEO uses that number to track their exam scores. And then that number is used once you get licensed. It continues to follow you throughout your career to then track your CE through OE Tracker. And so each optometrist only has one OE Tracker number, regardless of whether they're licensed in one state or 40 states, which there are a few that are. And lastly, I'd just say for the California board, as a member of ARBO, OE Tracker is your program, like we've been talking about NBERC. So you're welcome to serve on the committee, provide feedback, help us decide changes, enhancements. Like all our committees, OE Tracker is made up of our members. And they are who decide, where we go, what changes we make, and how we make the program better. So are there any questions about OE Tracker? That was just real quick and short, but I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Dr. Turetsky.
As I was saying before, I think it's silly if we don't make use of this. I use OE Tracker. It's ridiculously easy to use. There's no excuse that my dog ate my CE certificates because it's stored forever and always on the OE Tracker system. And it's just so easy for the board to monitor that people are actually doing the required CE and meeting their licensing renewal requirements. Again, I know that the legislature was a bit hard on us because we were not auditing a sufficient number of licensees, and this would pretty much make that a moot point. So Lisa, OE Tracker is fantastic. I use it, I like it, and I think the board as a whole should be using it as part of their licensing regimen.
I have hand raises from Shara and from Ms. Sims.
Thank you very much. So I wanted to just make sure that I understand the difference between access and data transfer. And there was also a point at which you mentioned receiving audit reports. So where does that fit in?
As a member, you have a username and password, and if you don't know them, Shara, let me know, and I can certainly let you know what they are. You can log in on our website anytime, and there are some preset reports that you can run to see the CE of your licensees, what is in OE Tracker. There's one that we call summary report, which basically just gives the total number of hours. There's a more detailed report which breaks down and shows every course title, number of hours, instructor, who the CE provider was, what the format was, and on and on. That gives more detail. And then you can also, if you're just looking up for one optometrist, you can look up for one optometrist. So that you can do at any time. That is part of being a member of ARBO. You have access to that. I can tell you, since the California board is not currently requiring optometrists to use OE Tracker, I can't guarantee that every course that any optometrist who's licensed in California has taken is in OE Tracker. It's usually sort of a cause and effect. The board says we're going to start requiring OE Tracker, then the optometrists start using it, and then you find that the information is comprehensive and complete. But when I showed you the numbers earlier, it looks like a good portion of those licensees in California do have some data in OE Tracker. And then as far as the audit report is what we provide to the state of Tennessee. We have a contract with them to do their auditing. We've done this for about 10 years now. It's a contract with the Tennessee Department of Health, where we had to go through a whole process where they got bids and we applied, and now we do this for them. And there is an additional cost with that because there is a lot of hands-on time that is involved with our staff.
And Lisa, will you remind me the cost of OE Tracker to each individual licensee?
Everyone has like I said, has an OE Tracker account, and they can log in at no charge. They can use it to scan the QR codes at the meetings at no charge. So if they want what we call complete access, where you can see all of the course information that I was talking about earlier with the instructors, the CE providers, the category, all of that type of thing. There is a charge to the optometrist of $25 a year, or we give a discount $60 for 3 years. And some of our members have chosen to pay that fee for all of their licensees because they use the program and they find it valuable. So some of the regulatory boards do pay that. We actually have a couple of state associations that pay that fee for their members as a member benefit. But the optometrists can use the program without paying that fee. They just don't have the complete access.
Okay, great. And if we were to basically require it, we would want them to have that complete access.
That's certainly a discussion that you could have. We just recently finished the audit that we did for the Louisiana Board of Optometry, and they did not pay the fee for their optometrists because they felt that the majority of the CE providers that were offering courses that were the Louisiana optometrists are taking were reporting it to OE Tracker anyway, and so it was voluntary. If the optometrist wanted to pay for the full access, they could, but in some cases they didn't have to. So it just depends on how you'd like to approach it.
Right. So there is a scenario where we could develop a contract with you to perform our audits or provide a data transfer so that we're able to perform audits, but not require the licensee to necessarily pay anything each year for full access.
Right. That's totally up to you. What about the payment and how you want to handle that?
Okay. Yeah. Just wanted to make sure that there was a scenario whereby we wouldn't have to increase a licensing fee, because with our population, it would be about $200,000 per year, so that we wouldn't have to either eat $200,000 or increase a licensing fee, but we would still be able to, on a back end with a separate contract, take advantage of the data and require that licensees report all of their continuing education within OE Tracker. Okay.
Right. And you have the ability right now to acquire the data. Logging into your account and looking up those instructions for that API that I mentioned. And of course, if, like I said, I'm not a technical person, but we could certainly get your technical people to talk to my technical people. I find that's the best way to do it. But anything more like you mentioned, if ARBO were to do your audit, then yes, we'd have to, have a contract and come to, some terms for how to pay for that.
Okay.
Right, I have a whole bunch of hands raised. So I think I saw Ms. Sims, Dr. Garcia, and then Mr. Mordomi. That's the order I saw.
Thank you. This is Board Member Sims. I concur with Dr. Tereski. There appears to be some tangible benefits to using the OE tracker, specifically with regard to auditing and also to renewal processes as well.
Dr. Garcia?
Yeah, I agree. I use OE Tracker whenever possible. It's an amazing system. The question I have is, may states like California may have categories of CE like we do with glaucoma, et cetera. Is there a way to customize the report so staff would be able to make an accurate audit by category rather than just number of hours total?
Yes, we could do that. We've done custom reports for boards before. If you're going to do the data transfer, then you would do that on your end so that the data came from us, the raw data came from us, and then you would see that in your system the way that you want to see it. But if you just wanted us to create a custom report where Shara or a board member or a staff member could log in on our website and run the report, we could do that. We've done that before.
And Mr. Mordomi?
Hi, I have two questions. One, you listed or you noted a number of jurisdictions, one where the jurisdiction requires use of OE Tracker, and you mentioned some other jurisdictions. Do you know if those jurisdictions made the requirements by regulation or statute, if you know? And second question is, if you have it handy, can you send to us copies of the legislation or citations so that our staff can look up the language?
Off the top of my head, I'm not really sure whether it was a legislative change or it's just a rule. I'm not sure. I would have to look into that, whether I have that information. I know I'm not sure. I was going to say in Tennessee, I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments?
The only other thing I would add is Dr. Ken Lewenda, I know, is on this meeting too, and he's an ARBO board member now, but he was on our OE Tracker committee for several years. So I don't know if Dr. Lewenda has anything he wanted to add about OE Tracker.
He has his hand raised also. Dr. Lewenda, please.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you very, very much. And again, very nice to see everybody again. Again, it's one of those things where when I served on the California State Board from 2007 to 2015, of course, we at that time in the beginning started the BREEZE project. And the BREEZE project with DCA, of course, was very involved, and the software, it had a lot of capabilities. And I'm not too sure, and maybe Shara can bring me up to date with that. But does the software program for all the regulatory boards, does it have any potential at all to record continuing education credits for the different regulatory boards that they serve?
I'm not a tech person either, and BREEZE is a gigantic system. So we will need to look into the API requirements, get those technical documents, and get those to our BREEZE folks to make that determination.
Having served on the state board again for 2 terms, and again, it was really a great honor on my part to be able to serve on the board. But one of the things, and not only did I serve in the California board, but also in the Vermont State Board and the Board of Optometry in BC. So I've served on multiple boards, and of course, we all realize the hats that we wear when we're serving on the board, and it's for the protection of the public. And of course, we also go through our sunset reviews and all just to make sure how we stand. So the regulators, or I should say the legislators, can be informed of where we are and how we're going. So for protection of the public, of course, CE education is extremely, extremely important. And the fact that what ARBO has done and what our state boards have done, we look at the courses, we see whether or not these courses comply. If it goes, let's say, to our board for approval, or ARBO, let's say, and it's in our statutes where it's got to be COPE approved, it's almost like a no-brainer. And in regards to the ability to audit, and I'm sure many optometrists probably don't like the idea of thinking, well, gee, there's a big brother in the background there looking at the number of hours. But basically, for the board, it's important to be able to look at those numbers to make sure that the doctors are compliant. We can be very trustful, of course, and we're all going to be doing what we require. We can be able to see what we need, and over a 2-year period. So I look at OE Tracker, and it really more of as a benefit for the boards themselves, because the amount of time that it takes, especially when you have, let's say, over 7,000 registrants, that's a big job. And if you could do 10% of all those, that's still a huge amount of time that's involved that can be done very easily on a computerized program that records all that data. And I think that for California, I see a major, major benefit. And I suspect down the line, too, that as we get more technologically inclined, there's more software, there's more technology coming out, and more classes are going to be taken, maybe even online. We're going to need to have more access. And can you imagine if, and I did 3 times the amount of hours basically than I did normally, let's say with my 50. So I could have like 150 to 175. Well, think of all those classes and all those doctors. It's going to be a tremendous task. And I look at the budgets and how we are in California and other states, that this is be a major, major improvement and savings to the board, just in time, and also the ease of mind, and the fact that the legislators would look at this and say, gee, this is unbelievable that you have that, and we can see that maybe you're doing 80% of audits or 100% of audits. It will help the doctors themselves, whether it be for going for a future scope. They can see that the education is there if that's what they're needing. So I'm talking to the choir here. I do think that the public members that are serving on the California board as in other boards, they'll see the benefit to know that those doctors are getting the work done. And I would highly recommend, and I'm not on the OE Tracker committee, I am on the board of directors of ARBO. I am your liaison, and any issues that you may have, always feel free to contact me directly. But I think this is a no-brainer, and I appreciate most of the people on the board that I've heard that have supported the benefit of what ARBO can do with OE Tracker. So my recommendation would be to seriously consider that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Linda. Does anyone else have any other comments or questions? All right, well, oh, Dr. ONeill, you used your real hand, not even the icon.
I promised I wouldn't, but I wanted to address Mark's comment. At Minnesota, our board pays for all of the OE Tracker fees for all of our optometrists. But the way we addressed it legislatively was we went to get approval to increase the cap on our licensing fees. And we weren't secretive about it. We told them this is why, but rather than build language in specifically to OE Tracker, we just asked for increase in our licensing fees and got that, and then just simply implemented it. So.
Thank you. I think Shara also has her hand raised.
I was just going to say, President Wong, that although there isn't a motion, I'm not sure if you do want to take any public comment on the last 2 items. We do have 10 participants within the public on the phone.
Okay. If it's okay with everyone, let's go ahead and I will open it up for public comment since we have been monopolizing the conversation. So, Madam Moderator, if you could open the queue up for public comment.
Thank you, Madam Board President. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or you may raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I am seeing no requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's closed.
All right. Does anybody else have any comments or questions or remarks? Well, then I would like to thank Dr. ONeill and Ms. Fennell for spending so much time with us this morning and with our wonderful discussions. And like I said, I hope that we can meet again at our next board meeting, which is on May 20th. And in the meantime, the board will have some other discussions amongst ourselves.
You're welcome.
Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you. President, if I may.
Yes, please. Oh, Ms. Sharp, please go ahead.
Sorry, I should identify myself. We are very thankful to have Dr. Major with Children's Vision Now on the call with us. His presentation is set for later in the agenda, but he's joining us from a conference. So I'm wondering if the board members would be willing to accommodate taking that presentation before we do the military licensure presentation from DCA and the budget presentation.
I think that sounds great. Does everybody want like a 5-minute comfort break or, okay, I'm
Yes,
getting
thanks.
a
That
couple of
sounds
thumbs
great.
up. All right, so if it's okay with Dr. Major, could we take a 5-minute break and then come back and then we could listen to his presentation? Is that okay? All right, 5 minutes. The time is 10:56. So let's say right about 11 o'clock, we're going to reconvene. All right, thank you. I've just been sitting here talking to myself because I forgot to unmute myself. Sorry, guys. See, I'm just waiting for Dr. Garcia and Mr. Morodomi, and then we should have quorum and, oh, and then Mr. Yu also. All right, so I just now have Mark is back on. I'm just waiting for Donald and Jeff.
I missed David's chocolates, so I had to go and find my own.
I think we all miss David's chocolates and his cookies.
Unfortunately, David's been eating his chocolates and cookies during the pandemic.
See, our new board members don't know that Dr. Turetsky used to bring us snacks every single board meeting. So by the time we reached mid-morning, we would all be reaching for the candies and cookies he always brought. All right, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, we're all back. Do we need to have roll call, Shar, or can we just continue?
I believe that we can just continue. We do appear to have a quorum. Just making sure. So there isn't a specific need to do a roll call to ensure of that quorum.
All right, thank you. Well then, Dr. Major, if you have the floor now, we would love to hear a presentation on Children's Vision Now.
And as I mentioned earlier, Dr. Major is at a conference. He secured a conference room in order to do Q&A with us. He was kind enough, though, to provide us with a pre-recorded presentation so that would be without any hiccups. So at this point, we'll ask the moderator and co-moderator to please play that pre-recorded presentation, and then Dr. Major will be available to us for question and answer following that presentation. And sorry, everyone, just ignore this heading next to it, as this is not the content for the military licensure presentation.
This is the moderator, and just bear with us as we get the video queued up. It requires a little bit of changing things around for us to get that video started.
As we're waiting, David, what was that event? The stand, is it called Stand Down, or it's something where they invite numerous organizations invite veterans to attend and get free services, including optometric services.
Right. Yeah. Stand Down. It's
Down?
done all over the country.
Stand
Yeah,
Down,
it's
right.
done all over the country.
All right. Thank you for reminding me. I'll have a question about that later.
Okay.
Lillian, I'm not hearing anything. Is Doug giving a presentation?
Yes, give us just a moment. We're trying to reactivate the sound, and we'll begin at the beginning of the presentation.
All right, this is a moderator, and we're going to switch presenters. I'm going to give it a try sharing it myself, so just a moment, please. Bear with us.
Oh, thank you. I'd like to thank the Board of Optometry for allowing me to share my passion and more recently of this issue of children's care issue to vision in the state of California. But I do appreciate all the work that you do behind the scenes for regulating and updating our profession. Thank you so much. I'd like to just do a summary of the healthcare inequality that's happened, again, from the support and from you, as well as sort of give you an update and a personal rationale for my involvement in this very important issue of access to children's vision care in the state of California. We truly had a vision care crisis during COVID. You know, hundreds of thousands, if not tens of thousands, didn't have the tools available because of the no access to glasses, and thousands waited, you know, months. And those in the field, we saw this in the eyes of these children. As many things, this healthcare inequality has been highlighted by the COVID pandemic, and the legacy will be the loss of academic opportunities for tens and thousands, maybe millions of children in our Golden State. Of a sadder note is how our state leaders in Sacramento, the Department of Healthcare Services and Cal PIA responded to this issue. You're probably aware that, you know, glasses were not available because the PIA shut down for many months, and the different managed health care groups, as well as the COA, were begging and asking for a reprieve or a temporary voucher system to meet the needs of these children. And these efforts were reprimanded, and actually the PIA contracted for labs outside of the state of California to slowly fill this need. Just a demonstration that this was not an issue of money, but of control, of policy failure. And this is not a small matter anymore, with almost 5.5 million children in the state of California under coverage for the state, including those under affordable health care who pay for coverage. Almost 50% of our children and 85% of children of color are affected by this policy. And it's not going to get any better. As the multi-ethnic study showed, the number of Hispanic children are going to rise dramatically, and they have a specific type of visual disorder, farsighted with astigmatism, that is present early and is the most likely to cause academic issues. And this just hasn't been a priority. You know, this small amount spent on optical lenses, pennies of every $1,000 spent. No priority, no interest. So I got involved when January 1, 2020, not a good year for us, the California finished their unification or monopolizing the whole state, requiring everyone in the state to use the PIA as a sole source provider. This is unique because now it gives us sort of a case study of what happens, and it has happened as the state has changed this policy. And again, there's no bids, no competition, no choice, no exceptions, and no local managed care control. This happened immediately January 2020. We were alerted 2 weeks before. And so the result in San Mateo County, another coastal county, the number of willing providers who give glasses collapsed to just 4 members, and the number of those accepting eye exams also changed. Interesting, because of a connection in Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo counties, SinCal Health leadership actually got on a plane, immediately went to Sacramento. They've seen what happened to the rest of the state in their provider panels, which they are obligated to maintain. And they literally funded themselves the glasses for 6 months. They thought it can be addressed, but of course there was leadership change twice during that time. No leadership at the time at the top end, and they watched 60 to 100% of willing providers leave certain areas in Santa Barbara and in tribal areas particularly. So I had a little extra time during the pandemic. So I did my own little post-study using the list from the San Mateo County eyeglass list. I called every doctor and every site on the list, and we asked these 3 questions. Do you currently serve the Medi-Cal or San Mateo Health patients? To provide optical services for those patients? And how has the change in the PIA affected your practice, if they were dispensers at the time? The survey was done in March. And here's the results. you'll find that many individuals under the managed care provided glasses, particularly the San Mateo Medical Group, Palo Alto Foundation, the Packer Hospital at Stanford. And even some doctors didn't realize they weren't being paid anymore. You know, with so many people that want to serve these children, but this was the last straw. Of interest, there was only one doctor who was providing half the glasses for the county. Eventually, most of them were sending them to a storefront optical called Eye Catchers, and they did the math and they couldn't accept. So all these doctors were referring to somebody, but they were told, oh, by the way, you have to pay for your own glasses. And again, you can see that with this, and as well as a COA survey, not too happy with the results with PIA. And so what happens, again, as the willing providers go down, we see this cause and effect. You know, willing providers go to 3. And so when the effect is when a person in the industry becomes a sole fabricator, access to vision care for children drops 60 to 100%, depending on the area. And that creates what I would call zombie provider panels that don't provide care or eyewear or accept new patients. So I did a little follow-up 2021 and found out that no, it hadn't gotten better. It had actually gotten worse. The domino effect had happened. The group that everyone refers to still doesn't provide PIA. And of note, the Palo Alto Foundation with 9 optometrists stopped taking any new Medi-Cal patients, meaning no more new children. I did get some data from the state, and they only did 607 glasses for the whole county that were covered. And of those, in one office, and she was wondering why she should keep doing it. So the idea is that, as again, I've actually looked at Inland Empire and others, there's lots of people on these managed care panels. But when you really get down to it, I went just started at Inland Empire doing the same thing. And just in one page, people in Idaho, the panel are not up to date. But again, there's no priority for the managed care to do so. So it's better to have a good-looking panel. And so we have these zombie panels of doctors for eye care. I'm going to take a little side trip because this happened at Stanford. If you don't know the work of Dr. Rosell, he just did a top-rated book on rural China. So Rosell goes to China as one of the first exchange students after Nixon opened it up in the 80s, and was interested in agriculture, but soon became very interested in the human resource. And so for him, the purpose of his experimentation was not just to meet the standards for research, but to find cost-effective solutions to real worldwide problems. Well, what did he find? He found that thousands of children in rural China did not have access to vision care or schools or anything else. So in the process, he did some great research with huge samples and gave out thousands of pairs of glasses, and it had the highest impact on educational attainment. It had more of an improving effect than nutrition or quality of teaching. And so giving a child free glasses improved their test scores to the equivalent of 1 year of education. And so Dr. Rosell calls the results fantastic. So here's Scott. He's invited to all these locations in China to talk about providing this care to meet the needs of these rural children. And while he's doing that, providing a better access to vision care, the Department of Healthcare Services enacts a policy that collapses vision care for millions of children and in his own area in Stanford. It's an irony. So remember, as the Department of Healthcare Services has updated its vision care delivery, it's assigned local managed care groups responsibility for the eye care. And they are to provide these panels. And this is what they've done in San Mateo. But it's retained at the same time to control over the provider of glasses or the fabrication of glasses. And so this organizational mismatch has caused all this problem. Again, no responsibility. State points to the local managed care points to the state. This needs to be updated in our data-driven society. But again, if you have a chance, look at Dr. Rozell's work. It's amazing. So my background, I've been involved with corrections. I've been involved with working with children for years, certified correctional officer, and with youth corrections in particular. And that's what convinced me to pursue this more directly. And particularly I've been fortunate enough to be under the shoulders of these giants. When the Orinda study first came out, the modified clinical technique, our local doctors, particularly a mayor and a vice mayor of Pismo and Arroyo Grande, started a vision screen program that I was able to inherit in the 1980s. And so school nurses asking for this help, we have this unique program called the Slow Lion's Eyes. And so we have passed over 6 years, see 55 public and private schools serviced by local Lions clubs, no cost to the state. And we're approaching 1 million encounters by this. Probably the most largest continuous outreach in the United States, I would suggest. I've looked for others, haven't found it. And I've been in charge of that. And so I've seen the demographic change, and I get the data back from the school nurses. And my data confirms what the multi-ethnic study showed, that there's been a demographic shift in California, this prevalence of astigmatism with hyperopia with Latino children and Latina children. We'd go to some, again, kindergartens, and half the children would need high prescriptions. And again, with my background, corrections, this earlier intervention needs to be assessed, and the annual training of school nurses. Of course, in a perfect world, all these children are receiving well baby and well child care from their pediatricians, but they're just not being referred, and because of training and other issues. When I first started practice, I was really involved with, of course, the jump in criminality in the state of California. We had tens of thousands of children behind bars, and we just happened to have one of the largest youth detention facilities in Paso Robles, and I was asked to start a program. So I was able to see over 2,000 wards, we called them there. We did a great study, found out the needs, the number of kids with vision issues, and also that can be addressed with vision therapy issues, and a lot with brain issues as I begin to understand. So what have we done with this? Well, I've got involved, again, in my limited way. Appreciate the COA. We were able to participate at the last year's Ledge Day. Over 40 legislators were involved. I realized that these children have really no voice. Hired my own lobbyist, believe it, a key person that was involved with the PIA and COB and VSP, Chris Michelli. And we attempted to talk to legislatures directly, and everybody nods their heads, but again, very little done. In the process, I discovered a group called the MCHAP, again, formed by Dr. Pan in 2014. And that is the group that's supposed to drive all children's initiatives in the state. Of course, they have a dental and healthcare, but have never mentioned vision in all the agendas I've looked at. Of interest, though, they do talk highly and ask for input by a nonprofit advocacy group called Children's Now. And so because of that, we've formed a coalition with Children's Now, using their expertise and messaging to MCHAP and the Department of Healthcare Services to try to get this message apart, to change policy. We don't want to have to legislate it. It's not really a money issue. It's a policy issue. Of note, Department of Healthcare Services only has 2 positions under vision care out of 4,000. And so you get an idea of the priority. And unfortunately, I don't know the doctor personally, but I've tried to talk to this doctor 20 times probably, calling, sending a letter. It's of note that made me really concerned after I tried to get in touch with the Department of Healthcare Services. Their lawyer contacts me. There's something going on, right? As a person, I can't even talk the lawyer contacted me. So that's the position. That's why I really got involved with this and this impact. And again, this connection with Children's Now. And so following the work of Dr. Bruce Moore, who did a coalition in Massachusetts, we're not reinventing the wheel. He was the first really optometrist hired by Harvard Medical School. And so going by what Bruce has suggested and the PALSA, he came together at the last Academy meeting. We had our first initial meeting, which included, of course, Sue Cotter, President-elect of the Academy, and just her wonderful work in pediatric disease. Tana Roberts, who's come over to Stanford. Scott Lambert, who's now the chief of the pediatric ophthalmology at Stanford. We've got optometrists at Berkeley, Western, SCCO or Ketchum, as well as UCLA. We've got stakeholder members, particularly Vision to Learn. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Hero Practices, David Maxwell Jolly, the supervisors for the mobile clinics that go out and go directly with kids, as well as Scott Rozelle and the lobbyist. We're attempting to increase that. So we need pediatricians. We need particularly Latino and children of color advocacy groups to join with us. But we've had our first few meetings and we've had some success. Just to maybe go deeper with Vision to Learn. Vision to Learn, of course, was founded by Austin Butner, who was the vice mayor of Los Angeles at the time, publisher of LA Times, philanthropist, a humanist. He goes to school nurses and asks, well, what's your main need? And of course, they said no access to vision care. And so he goes and starts a nonprofit, Vision to Learn. Goes, as Damien Carroll talks about, the first school they went to, they were thinking about 15%. It was more like 35% of children don't have glasses they need after they did the screening. Huge amounts of need. They went ahead and put together their own study through UCLA. And he made this comment. Austin just retired, by the way, because they liked it so much, he became the superintendent of the LA Unified School District, second largest school district in the United States, right? I don't know how he went through COVID. Austin, a great guy. But he wrote this, he said this: if deeply rooted poverty and an underperforming public education system strike you as intractable problems, think again. A simple yet powerful tool to kids in need, the tool, a pair of glasses. Vision to Learn also funded a program at Johns Hopkins, the Baltimore study that showed again, that glasses are just such a high leverage of event. And so now we have children in LA on charity, right? And people, again, I wasn't even aware of the size of this. They have a staff of 29 optometrists in LA alone. So this is a huge need. All these children are under the state's coverage. Why aren't they being served? Why do we have to have Zuckerman and other people? Just like a third world country, why do we need to have that when these children are supposed to be covered by the state? And we have made some progress, I am happy to say. Recently, we were included in the Comprehensive Quality Strategy. So here's a huge document. Vision is not mentioned once. And that's what you're going to find. First five, not mentioned once. It's just astounding to me that vision care is gone. Let's compare it to oral health. And that's our own fault. Oral health has a coalition outside. They're connecting with these. They're a part of these committees. And we have not done our fair share for advocacy for these children. So here's the good news is that even though it was not included in the initial draft, we had our coalition did send in emails asking for this change. And so on page 61, we have this tiny inroads similar to oral health. There are disparities in the provision of children's care. The Department of Health Care Services will work to incorporate measurement of children's vision screening services in future strategies. So out of that whole thing, we've got this tiny vision care is mentioned once. And again, not even alone with dental care. As far as for COA, and thanks, Christina, there is actually some push on the legislative side about Wilk Senate Bill 1089 about giving doctors the ability and nonprofits like Vision to Learn the ability to get glasses outside that system so that these children are served. I'm hoping it can be fixed with policy, not legislation. And we might even have a spokesman. A few weeks ago, just before the Super Bowl, we went down to LA, and Von Miller, a defensive end who made such a difference for the world champion LA Rams, moving over from Denver, he brought his Von's Vision nonprofit. Didn't have anybody in the new city to connect, and so he connected with our coalition, and we're happy to say we went in and did a great job of helping out. And if he's still in Los Angeles, he's might be a spokesman. Wonderful guy, wonderful parents we were able to meet and have a real great day with people from UCLA, Vision to Learn, and catch them. So let's stop the loss of all this human capital, as Dr. Rozelle would say. You know, vision care needs to be in the Department of Healthcare Services Medi-Cal Children's dashboard. Again, no measurement with no data. There's no pediatric priority given to the economist-proven highest leverage tool we can give a child: access to vision care and glasses. The numbers show that this is the Department of Healthcare Services' most widely spread healthcare disparity. The responsibility lies in Sacramento policy and not with the local managed care groups. They are the ones that have exerted that control. And children's vision care is truly the forgotten essential healthcare benefit in our Golden State. So here's a call for action. I would hope that the board would able to request the Department of Healthcare Services that they should include vision care metrics. This is not even a change. This is just the metrics should be part of the evaluation of any primary health care for all managed care groups. MCHAPs should include vision care metrics, exams, and glasses as part of their children's healthcare dashboard. We have been we're trying to just get on their agenda to talk, and we haven't been helpful. Connections with Senator Pan, who made the committee, a letter to the head and other key members from the board show that this is something that you have a concern about, and is something I would suggest under your purview. I would suggest the board should enforce Penal Code 2808I and don't allow the PIA to directly compete with local business providers of vision care. Remember, they weren't able to fully staff their individuals. And with the prison system, this is just going to get worse. They need to improve their provider relations. If they're going to be in the business, they need to be in the business. They need to compete with the commercial products. They need to constrict their optical footprint as the prison population constricts. So on a personal note, I had my own in-house optical for our 3-4 offices. And so children were getting glasses the next day, 2 days, sometimes immediately if they were an emergency. And I did give out free glasses during the COVID mess where they couldn't have glasses. And so here I've got this machinery waiting, and now we're down to, a week. And so, and again, loss of a half position. This is theoretically against the intent of the law. The PIA can't make pants to compete with the state. They can't make desks, furniture, but they can make glasses. And most of the individuals that serve these kids, they have to make it really inexpensive, and so they do it by on-site labs, and that gives excellent service for these kids. Again, another thing that you might look at and have your lawyers look at, because I would suggest they are not supposed to compete with local business. And if you look at the minute of their last meeting, it is not up and up where it should be in the state of California for the PIA code. So who do we talk to? Ken Hempstead. Look at all these pediatricians, right? He's the head of the MCHAPs. Wonderful Dr. Pan, pediatrics in the State Committee for Healthcare, Human Services. Mark Gailey, I don't know if I say his name. And then we're fortunate to have a brand new director, Michelle Bast, and she is listening. And so this is the time. This is the time to exert a little bit of influence, please, please. And we can change policy that will make a difference for these children. So let's do the right things for the children. Not only make it accessible, but easy to obtain the tools they need to exceed in school. And as the researcher from the multi-ethnic study said, this research is the bellwether that visual impairment in young children can be prevented or treated with low-cost solutions if we intervene at an early age. If we don't, the long-term effects of impaired vision at an early child that can adversely impact academic and social achievements will put our future generations here in California at a distinct disadvantage. This is a population health transformative imperative. And so thank you so much for your attention. And I just want to end on a personal note. You know, after seeing at least 2,000 or 3,000 children every year for 35 plus years, these are not numbers. These are faces. These are faces of happy, caring children who deserve to succeed. They're brown faces, mostly. They deserve to have the tools, and we need to do everything we can to make that possible. Thank you so much for your attention. Again, I'll be live and be happy to answer any questions or give further information about our coalition if any of you want to be a part of that, or just keep abreast of what we're attempting to do. We do have meetings scheduled with some key decision makers. We have hope, but we still need to keep this, you know, the fire going to move this forward. But again, thank you so much for your attention.
If I may, President Wong, I just wanted to say a thank you and remind our board members that we were so very happy to have Dr. Major give us comments during the last two board meetings during the items for not on the agenda. And we were excited to follow the request of board members to be able to have him here with us today. And so just wanted to thank him for taking the initiative to reach out to us the last two board meetings during public items, and then to be with us today to have a more lengthy presentation as we'd asked.
Yeah. Do you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hey, that goes on and on. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm in beautiful downtown LA. You can see the convention center. We have a brain mapping convention going on. You know, there's 35 vision scientists and optometrists down here. So having a lot of fun. Particularly any questions? That went on and on, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer, particularly on the ask.
I have hands by Dr. Garcia. Oh, Dr. Garcia, I think you're muted.
Hey, Doug. Jeff Garcia here, optometrist. Really not a question per se, but I just wanted to thank you for your presentation. I'm a Lions Club member too, and we do a lot of outreach and free clinics in our area. And we're located in Kings and Tulare County, which has the highest per capita Medi-Cal population in the whole state. So we are inundated with Medi-Cal patients. Interestingly enough, very few optometrists and even fewer ophthalmologists accept Medi-Cal because the reimbursement rates are horrible. So, you know, and just like you said, if we're trying to increase access to healthcare, the simplest way is to increase our reimbursement rates just a little bit, and you'll be surprised how many more children and Medi-Cal patients would be served. And you know, we also have an in-house lab. If you know, we could get Medi-Cal to cut loose on the lab services, optometrists, private labs, other commercial labs, if they were allowed to provide Medi-Cal glasses, that would eliminate that issue completely as well. So I think there are some relatively simple yet difficult barriers to access that we need to address, and you covered those very well. So thank you.
Yeah, and Jeff, you know, for me, just a year ago we were doing that, and it's not necessarily just an issue of money. The control issue and the hassle issue, and the way you're treated issue by the group. You know, if you look at the COA, did a great survey, and there's, you know, literally 14 pages of complaints that they got back. You know, you just don't treat people that way if you want to have a panel, and we don't deserve to be. That's why people leave. You know, people. I think every optometrist would love to do their part, and that's what I've seen. You know, I just see the dominoes fall. It's the sad thing. You look at San Mateo. You know, pretty soon even the nonprofits can't take it anymore. And so, appreciate your comments, and hey, we'll fix this.
Oh, I have Dr. Kawaguchi.
Dr. Major, thanks for your presentation. You touched on some really important points that I think historically the board has been aware of. And speaking of awareness, I think that that is one of the core opportunities. Even when we bring data, sometimes the key stakeholders, their willingness to change is a major barrier. And I think that we do need to ensure that there's access to care for these children. This is a healthcare crisis where these kids are struggling in our own state, and it's just painful to watch. And you know, hopefully as things move forward, we can find ways to support, because I think that when we talk about as a board consumer protection, that includes our children. And access to care is absolutely an opportunity to ensure that they're being taken care of and cared for well. So thanks for the presentation.
Yeah. See, our initial ask is just so tiny. It's just include the metrics. You know, you know, you'd think that would just be a part. This is not a ask for money or anything else. Just include the metrics. But they don't. I think they're very scared. I think what they're going to find, you know, is going to be a scary thing. But I think if we could just ask, if the board could ask, please, you could even ask for the metrics yourself, would be so important. Right now, especially, we have a key meeting with head people, and just a letter from the board going over there would be very helpful. Thank you.
In the past, we had a children's vision work group. We kept it in place for many years as we worked through, I think it was at least 3 different legislative proposals. And we've let it kind of fall to the wayside. And so, Dr. Wong, I was wondering if it may be a consideration for us to reform that work group.
Yeah, I think that would be a fantastic idea. Do we have does anyone want to volunteer to be on that work group now? I have Dr. Garcia. I need one other person to volunteer. I don't have any takers right now. Well, I'll put Dr. Garcia, I'll put you on the work group, and then we'll see if we can find you a partner for the work group. But I
You
think
know, I'm very passionate about it, but my time on the board is getting close to an end. That's my only hesitation.
And just so you're aware, whoever's on the work group will immediately become a member of our coalition if they'd like to. And if you just want to have, in other words, you can just be an information gatherer on the coalition if you'd like. In other words, you're not responsible for anything, but you can get access to our recorded meetings, our minutes, and what's going on. So just a heads up on that.
If I may, President Wong, Sharon Murphy, Executive Officer, Dr. Major, we would love as staff to be able to get access to those. And then we'll, of course, work with Dr. Garcia to funnel information so we can figure out ways that we might be able to galvanize the board's resources to be able to help in this effort.
Super. So I'll send that over to you. Thank you for that offer.
that's great. All right, does anybody else have any comments or questions? No. Oh, I'm sorry, Mark.
Hi, Mr. Major. On the dashboard issue, what would you anticipate the counter argument by the state as to not including the vision metric?
Well, so the interesting thing at the last MCHAT meeting, trying to get on the agenda, the staff said there is no problem. That the PIA problem has been fixed. They get their glasses. So they've categorized it into just the PIA problem, and they say that's getting better. So it's really fascinating. See, we haven't had any leverage at all. So it's new territory, and I think they're a little afraid of what they're going to find.
Oh, isn't the dashboard issue separate from the PIA issue?
That's what I would say, but they've connected it together.
I see.
So this was done way before the PIA collapse issue. But
So now the PIA issue, wouldn't the state's argument be it's cheaper to get it from the PIA than from other providers?
we don't know the data. I calculated it out, and it's actually very similar to what they definitely pay more for the PIA than I pay for the county jail. So, for example, I work at the San Luis County Jail. The glasses they get there is cheaper than you'd get at the PIA. They get approximately $30 per fabrication. To get an idea.
Thank you. I'm just anticipating what that
pushback, yeah,
might be.
The problem is we don't know the numbers, and the numbers aren't forthcoming. So the only thing we're asking for the numbers. We might find that we're wrong. But remember, these are things set up in the 80s, the way the PIA was set up, and the business has changed. We're a competitive market, So, but I'd be happy to talk further on that. But I'm with you. It's like, what do they have against this? Why are they so afraid to even consider getting the numbers? I don't know.
Oh, and then Dr. Turetsky has his hand raised as well.
Hey, Dr. Major, Dave Turetsky here. I'm one of the optometrists on the board. My group is the exact opposite of yours. We serve skilled nursing facilities, and we see about 50,000 Medi-Cal recipients each year. And we have many of the same issues you have. I was just hoping that you could provide your contact information to Shara, and I'd like to get in touch with you offline and just have a discussion.
Super. Yeah, and particularly in your case where you're doing all that work, so good for you. But the point is, it's just time to update. The system's old. It was designed for just a few, 10% of the population, and now they're doing 50%. It's time to update. So thank you. Would be happy to talk. Probably a little too happy to talk. Thank you for listening, and I appreciate. Excuse the passion and the sort of the out of controlness. When you're a bald old guy, you can get away with it. So, and you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for your time. Back to the conference.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Major. All right. So I think now the goal right now is we're probably going to break for lunch about 12:45, if that's okay with everyone. So I'm going to take things a little bit out of order because we have people from DCA who want to give us a report. So I think we're going to go with item 10 and then items 7, 6, and 9. So 10, 7, 6, 9 is what we're probably going to cover in the next hour or so. So Shara, if we could have DCA talk to us, perfect. Thank you.
That would be great. We'll go ahead and start with Deputy Director Carrie Holmes to give us an update from the Executive Office.
Good morning, Board President and board members. Can you hear me all right? Great. Thank you so much. I'm Carrie Holmes, Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations at the Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you so much for allowing me to provide a department update. DCA appreciates all board members and staff who have continued to serve through a pandemic that has affected all of us in many ways. As California moves past the recent Omicron surge and into a new endemic reality, new state public health guidance has relaxed mandatory face coverings. Masks are still strongly encouraged in indoor settings, and in some high-risk settings, such as healthcare facilities, face coverings are required for everyone, regardless of vaccination status. Local orders may be more restrictive to respond to community conditions. Please be aware of changing public health guidance and remember that as state representatives, we are all expected to adhere to state and local orders while carrying out our duties. On January 5th, Governor Newsom signed an executive order that extended the sunset date set in AB 361, allowing boards and committees to meet remotely through March 31st without disclosing member locations. I'm happy to let you know that on January 31st, Assemblymember Quirk introduced legislation AB 1733, which would permanently allow board and committees to meet remotely, while also providing both virtual and physical options for members of the public to participate. If this bill is passed by the legislature and signed by the governor, it would take place immediately. We cannot be certain that AB 1733 will be enacted or when, so the board should prepare for in-person meetings after March 31st. Before attending an in-person board meeting, members must verify full vaccination with DCA's Office of Human Resources or participate in COVID-19 testing. If any members have not yet done so, please submit your proof of vaccination. Your participation will help DCA in planning testing for future meetings. Please do this as soon as possible and don't hesitate to reach out if you need assistance. I am optimistic about the future and I look forward to meeting you all in person soon. I know that the board is still in need of some appointments, particularly in your dispensing optician spot and committee. I don't have news for you today, but I can tell you that the governor's office is making your board a priority, and I'm hopeful that we'll have news soon. I'd like to provide an update on DCA's Enlighten Licensing Project. This work group was formed in 2020 to utilize licensing subject matter experts within the entire department. The group's purpose is to help individual boards and bureaus streamline and make their licensing process more effective and efficient by utilizing best practices, information technology, and cost-saving measures. The first deep dive into the Board of Registered Nursing has been completed. A report will be released this month with recommendations that can be used by all boards and bureaus to improve their process. After this successful round, the work group will soon begin to assist another board or bureau. As DCA looks to the future, Director Kirkmeyer continues to lead the department towards continual improvement and excellent service. DCA is pleased to announce that Tanya Corcoran began serving as the department's first Compliance and Equity Officer effective March 2nd. Ms. Corcoran brings years of hands-on experience with DCA boards and bureaus to this new position, most recently as the Chief Deputy Registrar at the Contractor State License Board. This position will oversee DCA's Solid Training and Planning Solutions, Organizational Improvement Office, Equal Employment Opportunity Office, and Internal Audit Office. Bringing these offices together under Ms. Corcoran's leadership will be a tremendous benefit, allowing DCA to better identify and analyze emerging issues department-wide and provide timely solutions to DCA's divisions, boards, and bureaus. As a reminder, board members have training and reporting requirements. Each year, board members are required by law to file a Form 700 before April 1st or face penalties from the FPPC. DCA requests that you file as soon as possible. And as a tip, I'll let you know the best way to avoid all of my reminder emails and calls is to file right away. If anyone needs assistance, DCA's filing officer and legal counsel are available to help. As always, Board and Bureau Relations is here to help, and if there's anything we can do to assist, please reach out. This concludes my presentation, and I'll hand it back over to Board President Wang.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Holmes. Shar, are we going on to item number, oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Turetsky is frantically waving to me. Sorry.
Hello. Hi, Carrie. Dave Turetsky with the board. Question for you regarding meetings, assuming that member Quirk's legislation is not yet signed by the governor when we have our next meeting. Are members of the public who may want to attend the meeting, are they required to be vaccinated and boosted as well as masked if they are not?
No, we really can't tell the public what to do. They would need to comply with any state or local orders that are in place at that time in that location. The board can provide remote options, which would, I would guess many members of the public would take advantage of, but we cannot require anyone to be vaccinated. And board members also don't have a requirement to be vaccinated. They just need to either submit that verification or do testing just like any other state employee.
So, for instance, I would have absolutely no intention of going to a public meeting if I didn't know the vaccination status of the people around me or if they were required to be masked. So would I still be able to attend from a remote location, or would that have to be a publicly available location as well? Because if it's publicly available, then I'm not going to be attending any meetings.
Yes, as the law stands today, your location would need to be noticed.
Okay. Is it possible for Director Kirschmeyer or for the governor to extend the current status for people with special medical needs? Because I will fall into that category without any trouble. And I could provide a physician's note why I could not attend or have public members with me.
Well, anything is possible at this point. It does not look like there will be any extension, just given the other public health guidance that's in place right now. I don't know what will happen with the legislation. We certainly can work with you, board staff, and council to figure out the best solution that will make you feel comfortable, because everyone's individual circumstance is unique. And I think all of our goal is to keep everyone healthy and safe and comfortable as well. So happy to help to find a solution.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, and then Glenn also has his hand raised.
Hi, Carrie. I just wanted to, I know you talked about it, but I just wanted to make sure that there's an awareness that a professional representation on our board for opticianry, it's been a very long time that we've been waiting to get somebody appointed. I believe it's been over a year. And it makes it much more difficult as a board for us to have a full range of knowledge when we are trying to make decisions as it relates to that.
Thank you so much, Member Kawaguchi. And I am aware of that long vacancy. I share your frustration, and I can assure you that it is definitely on the radar of the governor's office, and they have been working on it. But I know it's difficult when you have those stubborn vacancies, but I do hope to have some good news for you soon.
Oh, and then Mark has his hand raised.
Hi, Carrie. If the quirk legislation is passed, it does give the board options to meet in person if it so chooses, I'm guessing. And assuming, looking, say, 2 years from now when the pandemic is endemic, or maybe less than that, I would hope that the Department of Consumer Affairs will recognize the value of in-person meetings like they were before the pandemic. So I know there's a great cost benefit in doing these meetings online, but I find I'm losing some opportunity to interact with my fellow board members. I enjoy working with the newly appointed members, but I feel like I barely know them. And fortunately, I do know the members that I had an opportunity to meet pre-pandemic. So there is a value to it. I understand costs are always consideration, but I hope the department recognize the value of in-person meetings.
Thank you for that comment, Member Moridomi. And yes, I agree there is a trade-off between in-person and remote meetings. And it is possible to meet in person right now. That's definitely an option under the current state of the law. And if the legislation is in place, boards would have that option as well. And I think the ideal is that combination where there are some options so that boards can take advantage of the benefits of remote and in-person meetings.
Yes, and I don't want to reach a stage where the state or DCA says, well, it's too expensive to have in-person meetings, and totally cut them off from a budgetary perspective. But you get what I'm saying.
I do. Thank you.
And does anybody else have any comments or questions for Ms. Holmes? Nope. Well, thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you, and I hope to see you in person soon.
Dr. Wong,
Yes.
you could include having the moderator open it to the public for that, for any public comment or questions.
Thank you, Rebecca. Madam Moderator, if you
Yeah,
could
thanks.
open up the queue for public comment, please.
Thank you, Madam President. I've opened up the Q&A, and if any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, or you may simply raise your hand or displaying instructions, and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's closed.
All right, well, I think that's it for item number 10. Let's go ahead and go on to item number 7, which is presentation on military licensure by the Department of Consumer Affairs.
I apologize, President Wong. We do have members of our budget staff here with us to give us an update on our current fund.
So
No,
sorry. Let's go on to item 10B, please.
So I'll pass it off to Veronica. Thank you so much for waiting so patiently. Ms. Hernandez, please, you have the floor.
No problem. Thank you. Good morning. My name is, well, I guess good afternoon now. My name is Veronica Hernandez from the budget office. I'm a budget analyst there. I'm thanking the board and executive staff for allowing me time to provide a budget update for you today. I would like to start with a quick update regarding the release of the governor's budget, which happened on January 10th, 2022. Governor's budget was released, provided updated budget numbers for the board that includes incremental adjustments to the current year, 2021-22, and to the base budget for the budget year 22-23, which was provided at the last board meeting. The board's fund began 2020-2021 with an adjusted beginning balance of just over $2 million. We collected approximately $1.8 million in revenue and expended approximately $1.9 million. The board ended 2020-2021 with almost $2.1 million in reserves, which equates to approximately 9.4 months in reserve. These months in reserve is the amount of time the board could continue normal operations without any additional incoming revenues. For the current year, the board began the fiscal year with a begin balance of $2.1 million. Board projects to bring in approximately $2.4 million in revenue and expend approximately $2.6 million, leaving the board a fund balance of $1.8 million or 5.6 months in reserve. Projections are based on actual
Did I miss
revenue.
something? Is there a share screen or materials that we can?
No, I apologize, Board Member Mordomi. We did not have a timely request to the budget office for those documents, so unfortunately they are not available with this. We will, of course, make sure that we are better staffed come our next board meeting and have the resources to make sure that we interact with our partners at DCA in order to bring you those budget documents.
All right. Well, Veronica.
Yes.
If there's something that we need to really focus on, please underscore it, because I can't keep all these numbers in my head, but go ahead and proceed.
Okay, thank you. Projections are based on actual revenue and expenditures through December 2021. Projections could change as we enter the second half of the fiscal year. The budget office will continue to monitor these expenditures and revenue and report back to the board with monthly reports as future fiscal months close. For the budget year 2022-23, which is displayed in the recent governor's budget, the board projects to receive $4 million in revenue and transfers, which includes the transfer of approximately $1.1 million remaining in the RDO fund, and expend $4 million, leaving the board with a fund balance of approximately $2 million or 6.1 months in reserve. A few things to note would be one of the main driving factors to expenditures and the incremental increase in future years is a result of personnel service adjustments. These include the general salary increase as well as employee comp and retirement rate adjustments. The board currently has 3 budget change proposals being reviewed by the legislature. These resources are included in the recent governor's budget release. And any future legislation or unanticipated events could result in the board's need for additional resources, which would increase cost pressures on the fund. The budget office will continue to monitor the board's fund and keep the line of communication with the board's executive staff open for future needs or expectations. This concludes my budget update, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Comments or questions from anybody? I see no hands. Oh, Mark, your hand's raised again. Or is that from earlier?
No, I have a question. So, looking at the budget, are we sufficiently funded, or do we have a healthy enough budget to afford an increase, a raise to our executive officer, or alternatively to fund a change in the step structure for the executive officer?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Karen Munoz. I can actually address a little bit to that. I'm one of the budget managers in the office. For the board, you guys are currently going through 3 BCPs that are in the legislative review. This does put some some strain on the board's fund currently. So when we look at out years, as we add more expenditures and less revenue coming in, this does decline your fund balance. So any additional expenses to the board does have that strain to your fund. We will continue to monitor this, work with with Shara and the executive staff to see if there's any other areas that we could make adjustments to, if there's some expenses that we could adjust. But without the increase in revenue and an increase to expenditures, this does decline the fund in future years.
Right, but I mean, if I were to buy a pencil, it would decline the fund in future years, right? So, I mean, the question is, can we afford the pay raise? Can we afford a change in the steps right now?
Well, and I agree with that. When you have some expenditures, we are projecting in ONeil in your operating expenses for general expense and things like that. There is not a current projection for future pay raises other than the normal general salary increase that we do project in future years of an increase of 3% approximately in your expenditures. On a fund condition, which we will provide Shara after this meeting, and she can share with you guys, that does show a 3% increase in expenditures. It does also show a decline in the board's fund. So if there are any plans in the near future for that structural imbalance, any way to alleviate those structural imbalances would be an increase in revenue to balance out the increase in expenditures.
Okay, so but you're not saying we can't afford it, is that right?
I will say that based on the current board structure, any increase to expenditures would put a strain on the fund.
Okay. Well, I may have some follow-up questions because it's interesting whether they use the word strain, because again, if I buy 100 pencils, it puts a strain on the fund, right? So at what point is it like an additional expenditure, and at what point is it
So what I will say is that so any additional increase to what the appropriation the board is already at. So if the board is already appropriated at, say, and this is just $3 million to spend, if we increase that to $3.2 million, then that would decline. We are projecting that the board spend their full appropriation in future years. If there's any reversion, that helps the fund. But if we have to increase that appropriation, so say we want, so if we add additional costs, so general salary increase or for Shara, those costs, if it's absorbed within current appropriation, it does take away from some of the natural reversions that the board has been able to find, but it doesn't increase the appropriation. But if we have to go out and ask for additional resources, for example, the 3 BCPs that are currently being reviewed, any additional resources or increase to the appropriation will decline the fund. If there is any purchases that are absorbed within your current budget structure, your current appropriation that you can spend, that just means less reversion back to the fund, but it is something that we are projecting out in future years to your fund.
All right, thank you.
All right, does anybody else have any other questions? Nope. Well, then I'd like to thank the budget office for coming in
you.
to us today.
Thank you.
Do we need to open up for public comment or Shar, or can we
Yes.
move on to item 7?
Yeah, President Wong, you might want to just check at this point if the public has. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you. Madam Moderator, if you could open up the Q&A for questions.
Thank you, Madam President. I've opened up the Q&A panel, and if any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, or you may simply raise your hand. We will give you a moment. All right, I see no request for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's closed.
Okay, I think I'm back. Shar, if we can move on to item number 7.
That would be fantastic. We have with us Brian Clifford from the executive office, who's here to tell us about the efforts of DCA-wide and pre-existing legislative statute that provides accommodations for military families and spouses. Brian, please take the floor.
Good afternoon, board members. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Well, again, my name is Brian Clifford. I'm a Senior Planning Implementation Manager here at the Department of Consumer Affairs Executive Office. I want to thank everyone for giving me a chance to give this quick presentation on military licensure. Just some background on myself. I've been the central point of contact here at the Department of Consumer Affairs for roughly the last 10 years since my time in the legislative office. So we saw in 2012 a significant increase in the number of bills relating to military licensure and other issues. I've included a couple of examples. Obviously, we'll talk about AB 1588, the renewal waiver legislation, but there was also legislation passed to expedite for military spouses. There was a question that has to go on every application and renewal regarding military service. Those are just a couple of those that passed then. At the same time, we saw an increase in the reporting that the legislature was requiring from DCA and its boards and bureaus. In 2012, we did a very large report regarding the acceptance of military credit with military licensure, and that report is on the DCA website. The legislature also added military-specific questions to the Sunset Review report template that I'm sure you all see when you go through that process. And those pertain to many of the bills that were passed back in 2012 and 2013. Recently, the legislature added additional annual reporting requirements regarding temporary licenses and processing times. So we'll be adding that to the DCA annual reporting process in the next 6 months or so. Some of the benefits that boards and bureaus have to extend to military members and spouses include expediting applications for honorably discharged and military spouses. And just a word on that, that doesn't mean that licenses must be issued. They still have to meet all of the same licensing requirements. They just get to go to the front of the line, and really we encourage all the boards and bureaus to, at every step of the process, to be working those applications as quickly as possible and resolving whatever issues arise. The renewal waivers for military members call to active duty, that's a general benefit. Some boards, and again, we'll talk about that a little bit later, have other specific statutes. Temporary licensure, that was passed last year, that all boards beginning next July 1st, 2023, must issue temporary licenses to folks in the military. And then the initial application license fee waiver, that's only for military spouses. And so essentially, that's just an add-on to the existing expedite process, and that starts July 1st this year. So to assist the military members and their families, DCA established a dedicated website that provided all of this information to them in one place. We also have links on that to other state agencies that they might be looking at, because DCA doesn't cover every licensed profession, such as teachers or attorneys. We also created a military button that goes on every DCA website, so people can easily link right back to that dedicated website. And that includes a helpful information for contact information for all the boards under DCA. So in 2018, DCA established the Military Licensure Committee to develop best practices and improve the licensing of military personnel. This was actually an idea that came from our Future Leadership Development Program. That committee meets biannually, and it's typically attended by licensing managers and lead analysts. And the reason why we do that is we really want to talk to the people who are doing the work and seeing the issues, and can speak to us about what problems they're seeing, so that we can communicate that to our stakeholders. We also created an intranet page for this committee, and that was developed so that we could share best practices and helpful links regarding the statutes that pertain to military licensure. More of a one-stop shop for our staff at all the boards. So the Military Licensure Committee has really been helpful at conveying how important DCA takes military licensure. The two members of the Future Leadership Development Project were April Oakley and Matthew Gibson, and they served as our two first chairs of MLC. And I just included these two examples in the presentation because I wanted to show how engaged they've been, and the great things that they've done to help the department and military members and their families. So military renewal waiver, I was asked to kind of speak to this. I think folks have some questions about it, so I'm happy to answer those, but just some brief background. This statute allows licensees who are called to active duty in the military to be exempt from renewal requirements, and that includes fees, CE, and any other requirements that a board might have. Now, this legislation arose from military members serving outside of California who did not have access to regular mail or continuing education providers. So these individuals wouldn't be able to know, oh, hey, I have to renew, or be able to communicate with their board or bureau. If you look at the Senate BMP committee analysis, and I included this reference because they were very specific about who was targeting, military reservists who were in a civilian status. Now, there are some boards that have their own military renewal waiver authority. 3 of those are Medical Board of California, Physical Therapy Board, and the Board of Psychology. There may be a couple others, but these were ones that I was able to find. I do want to point out that their authority only applies to renewal fees and not continuing education, so that's an important difference, I think. But under any renewal waiver, whether the general one or a specific board authority, no private practice is allowed. So we want to make sure that if these military members don't have an active license, they are not practicing on consumers off the base. And that is my presentation. I've provided my contact information. Again, if anyone ever has a question, they can come to me anytime regarding a military issue. And I'm happy to turn it back over and answer any questions you guys might have.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Clifford? Do not get any answer. Thank you very much for coming to talk to us today about this.
You may wish to just double check the public doesn't have any input or questions.
Thank you, Rebecca. Madam Moderator,
Of course.
if you could open up the Q&A, please.
Thank you, Madam President. I've opened up the Q&A panel, and if any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or you may simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions. All right, I see no requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's closed.
All right. So thank you again, Brian, for coming in and talking to us today. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it. Okay, we are now moving on to item number 6, discussion and possible action on 2022 legislation. Shara.
I apologize for my slowness in unmuting. So our most important here today, we continue to work on item 8A, proposed changes to Business and Professions Code 655, 2559, 3040, and 3094. We at last meeting activated a work group on this particular issue. Dr. Zaretsky and Dr. Kawaguchi have met with staff. We're very excited that Cricket Borges, who comes to us with more than 20 years of enforcement experience with DCA, is staffing that committee or that work group, and has already started to jot down some things that might help us to better improve enforcement and to clarify our authority. We don't have any textual updates for the board to review at this point. We are continuing to review and hope to really do a deep dive. I think there's been a request from board members for the last few years to really look at modernization of our statute, our practice act within optometry. And so we are undertaking that with this work group. We will come back to you when we do have text or edits that might need discussion among the committee, and then of course approval from the board. We're not currently included in a legislative vehicle, so none of these changes that we've discussed, particularly those that we do have outlined coming from the administrative law judge decision on the Stanton Optical case. We do not have a vehicle for those now. There are vehicles that could be used, so we of course are still in conversation with the legislature regarding those specific provisions and any others that might be identified before the end of the legislative session. So we will come back to the board come back to committee in order to discuss those, and then of course bring those to board with recommendations. So our real piece of action today is, as you heard within the update from Deputy Director Holmes, there is Assembly Bill 1733, authored by Assemblymember Quirk, which would give the board an opportunity to continue meeting in teleconferences, as well as providing a single public meeting space where attendees might gather if they so choose, but also have the ability to continue to contribute to meetings via WebEx as we are today. So there in your materials, you have an appeal letter from the Little Hoover Commission, which conducted studies last year of several public boards across the state. and came to a conclusion, of course, as we've talked before, the ability to reduce travel costs, the increased participation that we have received in our board meetings and that many boards have received over the last 2 years using the telecom or WebEx video services. So there's a request from staff that the board members open up discussion and determine if it is their will to provide a support letter or any position on the Assembly Bill 1733.
Anyone have any questions for Shara? Is there anything else for item 6 that we need to talk about, Shara?
No, there is not.
Hi, Lillian. I have one question on the proposed change to the BMP code. One question, actually. Reading through the text, I see there are certain situations where we add to the subject that this covers a person, we also add and entity, person and entity. So we've added entity to the proposed text. I would suggest that legal counsel look at the addition of entity to that line. My legal understanding, and it depends on the definition of statute, that person includes entity. So I'm wondering about the redundancy, and does the redundancy create an ambiguity in what the term person means? I know that sounds very legalistic. I just ask that staff work with legal counsel to make sure that we're not creating ambiguity when there should be none.
This is Executive Officer Murphy. I'm not sure if board counsel will want to comment. This is a change that we are bringing forward because of our inability to substantiate our claims against Stanton Optical as holding itself out as providing optical services. The ALJ decision specifically said that there was not a person holding itself out with the ability to do or to provide optometric services, and therefore Stanton Optical was not in violation of that provision of our law because they are not a person but an entity. So I think that I hear you with that, on the legalese and the I think precedent that has been an understanding. Unfortunately, we were unable to defend our citations with the current wording within our statute.
Thanks. That sounds kind of crazy to me, but I'll leave it up to legal counsel to figure that out.
Sure, noted. We can take another look. Sure. Just confirm that.
All right, does anybody else have any other comments? Nope. Do we need to open up for public comment on this one also?
Yes.
All right. Madam Moderator, if you could open up the Q&A for public comment, please.
Thank you, Madam President. I've opened up the Q&A panel, and if any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or you may simply raise your hand. We're displaying instructions, and I do see we have a Christine Schultz who is raising her hand. So Christine, just know that you have a 2-minute time limit. I'll give you a 10-second warning. And Christine, you should be able to unmute yourself. Okay, you're unmuted.
Great. This is Christine Schultz representing the California Optometric Association. Just wanted to bring to your attention several pieces of legislation that we've been working on that I understand that the board has taken an interest in. We would hope to get the board's support for this legislation. First, it's the bill to waive professional licensure renewal fees on all military personnel stationed outside of California. The bill number is SB 1237, authored by Senator Josh Newman. You know, we thought the board might want to co-author this legislation, but a support letter would be really great, very helpful moving forward. We also have the bill that Dr. Major mentioned. It's the PIA lab issue to allow patients to go outside of the PIA to get their eyeglasses. This is a bill by Senator Scott Wilk, and it's SB 1089. Would love to get your support on that as well. And then lastly, you know, we have two scope measures. One of them I think would be appropriate for the board to support at this time, which is our cleanup bill. It's the Salas bill, AB 2574. That bill addresses two provisions that were inadvertently dropped out when AB 407 was enacted. It's the ability to be a lab director for CLIA wave testing and the ability to stabilize a patient with acute attack of angle closure glaucoma. So, you know, there's no expansion in this bill. It's just fixing those mistakes. Would love to get the board support. I'm sure the legislature would appreciate the board to opine on this to let them know that these are just technical things that need to be fixed. So, love to get your support on those issues. Thank you.
This is Executive Officer Murphy, if I may, President Wong. Just our timing with our set calendar for committee meetings did not work out well with the deadlines for introduction. So our committee met prior to many of these bills being assigned a number. We will, at our next committee meetings, review these bills and bring to the board recommendations for support or other positions.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you, Shara.
And this is the moderator. We have no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's closed.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on to item number 9 then, discussion and possible action on regulations on mobile optometric office owner permit program. Shara?
Thank you so much for an opportunity to discuss our progress on these regulations. So the board will remember that last year we brought to you a regulatory package that works specifically on Assembly Bill 896. We were lucky enough to work with the former Assembly Budget Chair, Assemblymember Evan Lowe, in our sunset review or our sunset extension legislation, and we're able to confirm some additional details on the owner-operator program and the permit of mobile optometric offices. We are working diligently with Reg Council right up to the minute this morning. And we're really trying to bring you language to review. We do have a few more details to iron out with Regulatory Council. So we will be bringing the forms and language to the Legislation and Regulation Committee on April 22nd. But want board members to know that we are still working as feverishly as we possibly can in order to make the deadline for approval of this regulatory package by the end of the year. We will, of course, continue to work with the legislature to let them know our progress as well. And of course, we'll make any discussions or, any accommodations or request any accommodations we might need based upon the length of time that we know regulatory packages take to move through DCA agency and eventually the Office of Administrative Law. So apologize that we weren't able to get all of our ducks in a row to show you those forms and text today. We will bring them to the Leg and Reg Committee on April 22nd so that stakeholders and board members might have an opportunity to sufficiently review the proposed elements of that regulatory package. We miss Mark.
Mark Johnson, not me.
Yeah.
I miss you sometimes too.
All right, so is there anything else that we need to talk to in 9, or that's pretty much it, right?
That's pretty much it. I don't know if we have any public comment, any of the stakeholders for that particular issue who might want to give comment. We might want to open up for that. as that could inform the work that we do between here and the committee meeting.
Madam Moderator, thank you. Madam Moderator, if you could open up for Q&A one more time, please.
Thank you, Madam President. I've opened up the Q&A panel, and if any member of the public would like to make a comment, you can type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or simply raise your hand. And we do have a Dr. James Deersdorf raising his hand. So James, you'll have a 2-minute time limit. I'll give you a 10-second warning, and you should be able to unmute yourself. There you go, you're unmuted.
About 6 months ago, we started to organize a mobile optometry clinic here in Ventura County. And I was surprised to find out that there was no legislation or approval for such an endeavor. And we've raised funds. We have about $58,000 in the bank account to build a totally free optometric mobile clinic, and I would like to know how firm the date is when we will know that all the regulations are approved. So I'd like to have some information on that, particularly the physical requirements such as ADA access, etc. So let me know where you stand and how firm the final date is.
If I may, Madam President, this is EO Murphy. Thank you so much for your comments, as we would love very much for you, Dr. Dearhorn, to be a part of our Legislation and Regulation Committee on April the 22nd. Would love to be able to have your input as a stakeholder. Then we will intend to have the board review that content during our May 20th meeting, with the hope that that would be approved and then sent through the regulatory process. That process includes review by other agencies, and then, of course, a 45-day comment period where stakeholders can give additional comment. So we look forward to you coming back and participating with us on April 22nd for our Leg-Reg committee meeting. I apologize, I don't have an exact time, but we will have that soon. But again, April 22nd for the Legislation and Regulation Committee, and then also on May 5th for our next quarterly board meeting. And from there, then we will submit the regulatory package to review by DCA agency and then ONeil, and then we will notice the 45-day comment period as well. So we are unable to give a firm deadline as to when those will be approved, but we want to make sure that stakeholders are aware that they will have time for input on April 22nd, on May 20th, and then we will advertise a 45-day comment period during which we will appreciate additional comment from stakeholders.
Thank you very much. I'll plan on attending both the 22nd and the May board meeting. So look forward to working with you.
As do we.
All right, this is the moderator, and I see no further requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's closed.
All right, well, we've gotten through all the items that I was hoping to. So how long do we want to break for lunch? I'm suggesting half an hour, 45 minutes, or an hour.
How about 1:15 we reconvene?
Okay, 1:15, that gives us about 35 minutes. Is that okay with everybody? All right, 1:15, we will reconvene, and then we will go through items 11, 12, and 13. All right, see everybody at 1:15.
Thank you so much, members.